Lucas Kost.
What's
Look at
up,
that.
man?
Look at that massive. Are you okay? So you're on your phone, correct?
Yeah,
Is there a way you can tour us that carving behind you?
for sure. I could do that. Yeah.
I
It's
would love to
this
see.
I'll go stand beside it for scale first of all so you can see. I am 6'3".
Oh my goodness. Dude, that
Okay.
is unreal. What is it, 7 foot?
It's 7 feet tall. That's right, yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. It's a big one. It's a big one.
How
The
is it?
biggest I've done by far.
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
it's absolutely massive.
Yeah. Yeah, I could give you a little tour. Why don't we do a little close up?
Yeah, because I feel like you've made so much progress in the last
It's
uh
coming. It's
couple
coming
days,
along.
even just few days. Last I saw it.
Now, I'm a newbie on this method that we're connecting with here. Oh, I just canceled my video
You're
for a
good.
second. Great. How do I
You're good.
flip? Dot, dot, dot.
I don't
Yeah.
know actually. It's a good
I'll just
question.
do this. That's fine. Just do a little selfie tour.
Yeah. Wow.
So
My
yeah.
connection isn't great, so it's hard to see,
Okay.
but I can see the gist of the shapes, and that is awesome. Oh, you're gonna pull the hair ahead
Yeah,
of the.
the hair
Yeah.
will be kind of falling vertically down, partially covering the face there. Yeah,
Wow.
a relatively small crown of thorns compared to many examples. It'll be more subtle. And I'm not entirely sure what I'm doing with the drapery yet. I know the approximate forms, but I'll have to do a lot of studying and looking at
Yeah.
references and looking at the clay model that I designed as well. And yeah, so that's how it's going. It's kind of
Dude.
see how it's mounted to the wall with this thing that I made.
Oh, so yeah, clever. I like that. So that fixes in the back with some sort of a screw.
Yeah, it's let's see if I can show
Wow.
you. It's
That's a
this is a
massive screw.
carver screw, and as a matter of fact, I bought this in Italy from Bruno Walpuff, so it
No
once belonged
way.
to him. So
No
yeah,
way.
yeah, uh-huh.
Okay, so
85
background,
euros is well worth it.
right? So I was gonna say background for people that don't know. Bruno Wolfpath is like Lucas and I's hero guy.
Yeah, is he your hero guy too? Because yeah, I
Yeah,
totally feel that way.
yeah, yeah. He's definitely top top notch. I would say definitely top three favorite carvers
Yeah.
to be maybe ever live.
Oh my goodness, I would put him in that category too, probably. But
Yeah.
yeah, he's incredible. His work is just so sensitive and so I love how his work just really focuses every ounce of energy on getting the forms exactly right.
Yep.
And there's like I don't think the guy uses a V tool in any of his carvings to do any hair detailing
Right.
or anything, right? Like the hair is just kind of smoothed over, but
Yeah.
his work is just hauntingly beautiful, and he just like every bit of energy that would have gone into a detail goes into just making sure the forms are precisely exactly right, and it just yeah, it's beautiful stuff.
That's a really good explanation for why he's awesome. And I was talking to somebody, I think my neighbors were over and we were looking at his work, talking about you actually, that because
Oh,
we'll talk about that in a minute, but you got to
sure.
meet him, right, in person.
Yes.
And so I was talking to them about you and how, all these years back we met through a live stream workshop and here you are becoming this amazing wood carver, meeting one of my hero wood carver guys. And I was just telling them how much I hate your guts. No, I
Oh
wasn't. I
my
really
gosh,
wasn't. But
this
I
young guy
wasn't.
in his mid late 20s doing cottonwood bark carvings, like mowing my grass over here.
Yeah, dude. Well, that's all of us, man. Well, actually, that's a very small category of people.
Yeah,
That
yeah.
includes mostly you and I.
I think so. Yeah, yeah.
And if you're in this category with us, please comment below because we want to meet you. But
Right on.
um, anyway, showing them the texture, like you made a great point. His forms are what are so beautiful and perfect so that he can get away with. And in fact, I almost wonder, and you could tell me this, because you've met the guy and seen probably his work in person, it's almost as though he's stretching what texture's importance is. Like it's almost like,
Yeah.
in sculpture, you're basically taught, if you read a book, even if you read a book on design and sculpture, they always talk about texture being very important
Yeah, the
to,
surface treatments. Yeah.
right. The surface is so important
Yeah.
to the sculpture. And you look at his work up close, it's not like he doesn't care, but it
No.
is intentionally almost,
Yeah.
at least in my view of things, like really rough. What I'm trying to say is
Yep.
like there are gouge marks on random spots in the face. There's rasp. He has these rasps that he uses um,
Yep.
that right rifflers
Exactly.
that big scrapes in the
Yeah.
face and all over.
The way he combines painting and then rasping and then painting and rasping, the final result in the rasped areas, anyways, it's like this translucent skin-like kind of effect, which is just it's just hauntingly beautiful to look at. And yeah, I think the way I interpret those, like the gouge marks that are left, and it's like it's almost emphasizing that, like, it almost draws your attention towards the face and the eyes, because the way he just draws on the eyes with a little white pencil and then a pencil, right? And just the forms are so perfect and beautiful, and
Yeah.
you really get the sense that there's a living presence in that sculpture of a person
Yes.
that's caught in a moment. And it's like, all of the details that could be wrinkles in the eyes or the hairs or whatever, those are not important. It's like it really
Right.
emphasizes, like, you had to make contact with this human figurative work, and yeah, it's beautiful. Yeah.
Yeah. And I think part of that, or at least I think a big part of that is his using live models and the detail of his reference photos with measurements. And my neighbor noticed that we were looking at this video on YouTube, and he has all of these profile shots, 3/4, front view, side view, life
Yep.
size, blow up printed pictures, and then measure very specific measurements from the top of the head, the bottom of the head, from like the chin to the sternum, all these
Yep.
measurements that are
Oh yeah.
helping him. And he so, but the exactness of it,
Yeah.
and it goes way far beyond measurements. Like you have to have an intuitive ability
Yeah. Oh
to do
yeah,
that.
for sure. Like the skill of observation and just being able to absorb the right data is
Yep.
something that is developed over years and years and years and years. And
Yep.
for those who don't know, I was fortunate enough to go to Italy last October, and I did a master class for 2 weeks with Bruno Walpath, something that Brian Melton, a friend of the show, convinced me into doing.
Yeah. Yeah.
Shout out to Brian. Thanks for convincing me. Him
Yeah.
and my fiance, she was very supportive with that too. So yeah, like his seeing him work in person, just the amount of time that he spends looking is pretty astounding, and was surprising to me. There were
Hmm.
moments where it was like, everybody knew not to talk to him or ask him a question when he was looking at what there's visualizing kind of what he should be doing next, I guess, and then he would
What was he
explain it
looking at?
afterwards. And so, the amount of time spent looking and thinking compared to the amount of time spent carving is pretty lopsided, I would say.
So when he's looking, is he looking at the reference, at the model, or the carving?
Both. So yeah, it was absolutely essential part of the method that we were taught was using a live model. There were two live models. There's a group of 6 students, and three of us got the male, three of us got the female, and so he was kind of bouncing around back and forth between those groups, and he would
Right.
be looking at the model. You kind of set your piece as close to the model as you can, and then from whatever angle it is that you want to be working at, standing really far back, standing really close up,
Yeah.
looking at the model, looking at and using calipers as well, right? So
Okay.
doing one-to-one measurements, and I think
Wow.
that's another element of it that really, like, I think all I mean well, he's obviously had an extremely long and deep career, so I wouldn't make a broad statement like all of his work is one thing, but anything that I think I've seen online is one-to-one life-size scale.
Yep.
And the way that he was teaching us, you're using your calipers, you're taking a measurement on the model, walking right over to your piece. So you don't even necessarily need a number. You just need the measurement that you're taking and translating it. So that really, really helps. And I've kind of run into that. Well, I mean, I didn't have a live model for this to begin with because the amount of
Yeah.
time I would need a live model would be, probably thousands of dollars for the model. But
Right.
like translating the measurements from the clay model that I made up to seven
Right.
feet tall, it's like a lot different than having the one-to-one measurement where you can just go from the model to the piece. So that's a really good workflow, and it's a big part of the method for sure. So I'm excited to try it out again with a live model, doing it at the life-size scale. That'll be fun.
Yeah. Yeah, so you think you'll have, so for me, one of the things I've suggested folks do is, because like you said, hiring a model would be thousands of dollars for the time that you might put in a large sculpture or even a small one that you're proud of. And so
Yeah.
I always tell folks, like, look at Giacometti, right? Like,
Mm.
he was, so for background, Giacometti was the wealthiest living sculptor. And he realized his sculpture is selling for millions of dollars. There were these
Mm.
abstract, kind of wiry men that were cast in bronze, done in clay. And he
Right.
had this sort of weird kind of, it looks almost like these people were made of mud. They're like slapped on onto these frames, these
Mm.
wire frames. And so, what was interesting about him, though, and I lost my train of thought because I got so excited talking about Giacometti. We were talking about models. He would actually, the majority of his early work when he was kind of refining his skill was um, of his brother. His bro was literally in his studio and he was sculpting him. And I think
Yeah.
about that a lot because growing up, like the big revelations that I had were from like two things, like two memories. Like the first one was like a side profile of a face, seeing
Mm-hmm.
a really super simplified side profile line drawing from some
Yeah.
wood carving instructor. And then like my dad and my sister posing for like a carving
Yeah.
just for like 5 minutes at a time in between getting, trying to get him off the lawnmower or, working in the shop.
Yeah.
I digress. But yeah, I just think that it helps so much. Like when you
Yeah.
have a live model.
Oh yeah, having a live model is like I can tell the difference in my work where I'm using a live model
Yeah.
and not. It's yeah, and it's just a much you have a lot more sense of kind of certainty and stability in the working process. You can
Yes.
you really lean on the model a lot.
Yep.
Whereas if you're just kind of triangulating between different reference photos at different angles and you're trying to sort of piece things together and fill in the gaps, it's like there's always that uncertainty of like, well, shit, I might be wrong. I don't know about this.
Right. Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. It really does feel like when you go from carving, on a given project from a picture to the point where someone walks in, hopefully the person that's in your reference photo,
Yeah.
like feels like cheat. It literally feels like cheating. It's like,
Yeah. I totally.
yeah. Yeah.
But
And so,
that's an essential part of the method, and that's yeah, that's so totally yeah.
yeah. But so I've never really done, I don't know that I've used my calipers all that often on live models before. So that kind of makes me want to try that out because I have a fairly decent sense at times on a good day of like what a measurement might be and how to apply it.
Yeah.
But it's way off other days. So
Yeah, yeah, yeah. It's interesting, very interesting. And
yeah,
like I find when I'm not carving from a model and just kind of going off of my intuitions, which I've been carving faces for a long time. I have like pretty good intuitions for just facial proportions.
yeah,
Not always, but they can like I can make a decently good proportion face just kind of from my intuition.
right,
But I find when I'm doing that they all start to look somewhat the same or slight variations on the same thing.
yep,
Where like if you have a great a model or a great reference photo and you're actually taking the measurements, then it's like, oh wow, that is so different than my rule of thumb from where the eyebrow ridge to the bottom of the nose to the chin is.
yep,
It's like I'm totally breaking my rule, but now I'm going off of the reference photo, and then the
hmm,
result is like, that's so fresh and interesting.
right,
Yeah.
yeah, it's true, and it's like I was looking at in a YouTube video. I talked about it in the last podcast, but like the old carvings that I had done, and
Yeah.
just the same mistakes would happen in every single project.
Right.
And it's
Yeah.
obvious that I was carving from trying to carve from my head, and
Yeah.
maybe it's a good. I've actually heard Brian talk about how important it is to be able to carve from your imagination.
Yeah.
Brian Melton pushes for that, and I
Yeah.
like that idea, and I like that he stretches that muscle, the creative muscle.
Yeah.
But
It's
yeah,
important to do
yeah,
it both ways, I think. Yeah. I would totally agree.
right. But yeah, to be honest, yeah, I generally like to have a picture, unless I'm knocking out a wood spirit.
Mm-hmm, for sure.
Right.
Yeah.
But
And
even
the
then,
game is totally changed when you're doing a full scale figure as well, right? Because you could
mhm,
hone in on the face and carve the most beautiful face, but then if you realize that you set it on a head that's not joined to the shoulder in exactly the right way, then it doesn't matter how beautiful the face is carved if it doesn't line up with the neck and the shoulder and the rest of the body, right? So that's where the mathematics really kind of comes in. Is
right,
you need some measurements. It's you
yeah,
know, yeah.
yeah, right.
Yeah. There's
So how are
the
you?
classic saying
Uh,
about, Michelangelo that he could just visualize something in a block of marble and just, with the mallet chisel realize it. But it's been established that he used models, all the time. And there's actually funny examples of some of his sculptures where it's supposed to be a female figure, but it's very clear that he was using a male body as a reference for this female figure because they're like it's beyond just the normal kind of idealism of that era
right.
of sculpture. It's like this is an extremely masculine, muscled woman.
Wow.
I mean, you can't prove something like that, but I've heard that theory proposed
He
that he
might
was
have been
using a
using
model
Leonardo
and
da
it was a
Vinci.
male.
What if he was using Leonardo da Vinci?
Oh boy, the bearded lady.
There's a possibility there.
Possibility.
I've heard he was a very effeminate man, so you just never know.
Right, you never know.
Um, but no, that's yeah. People love to quote me that Michelangelo thing to the effect of like, "Do you just see it like Michelangelo saw it in the marble?" And it's like
Mm,
that would be really fun if
that
I
would be
did.
great. Yeah,
Like if we had this just internal ability to always know where we're going next because of this vision.
yeah.
I
I
bet
don't
there
believe
are.
that.
I think that's like there's like a certain level of autism that um, I've seen some artists have that somehow empowers them. I don't know,
Yeah,
strengthens certain parts of their visual cortex where they literally can remember. You've seen those like those skylines. There's like a young kid who can
oh yeah,
fly. They literally flew the kid via helicopter over a city skyline and went back, and he could draw verbatim each and every building or almost every building that he saw in a
yeah,
pretty accurate rendering of it. It's like
yeah.
I would kill to have that.
No kidding. No kidding. That would be that'd be unbelievable. And you never know. There's just so much variation in the human mind and brain. That's like the different capacities that are out there. You wouldn't put it past some people to be able to do that. But yeah, for me personally, that's not in the cards.
Right.
Yeah.
So talk to me a little bit about this statue behind you. You're talking about measurements, and
Yeah.
I've done maybe just a couple of human figures, a handful of human figures, but never to this scale. What does
Yeah.
that feel like in terms of references? What are you using? How are you finding those measurements?
So the main method that I used to get the measurements down was making a small scale clay model
Yep.
and basically scaling up from there. And I just figured out my conversion factor. Uh, so
Right.
I use my calipers actually right on the clay model
Nice.
and take that measurement, and then I have my conversion factor, and it just blows that measurement up, and so
Yep.
I can then, if the measurement happens to be small enough that I can use the calipers again to translate it onto the piece, I'll do that. But if not, I'll just kind of use a measuring tape. So
Right.
that's one way of doing it. I also, speaking of Da Vinci, I actually am using this app that's really interesting that my dad told me about. It's called Da Vinci Eye. Have you heard of this?
No.
No. So it's an augmented reality app that uses your phone's camera in real time to scan your environment, and you can set what's called an anchor for your camera to detect. And so once you have your anchor established, you can then overlay another image onto that. So it
Cool.
creates this kind of virtual world where you're scanning around, but over top of this block of wood in front of you, you've got the clay model of the Christ kind of
Wow.
fixed to that on my screen. So that was another way of just kind of checking. So I had my phone just kind of set up on a tripod, and I would step back and look at this screen to make sure things are kind of in place. That's also how I traced the kind of drawing to do the
Oh,
initial rough out on. Yeah. So
how
that's
cool.
cool.
So I'm struggling. How do you use the app to draw? Were you drawing it on the thing and then running back to the phone to
That was
check?
a total not optimal workflow. I was a total like look at it and okay, I can tell this line is right by this little discoloration in the wood, and then I
Yep.
would go find that discoloration in the wood and then just kind of guess and check a bunch,
Yeah.
going
Right.
back and forth. So,
Okay.
but it worked.
Would
It
you do
worked
it
well.
again?
Uh, I don't know. This is like there are many things that I would do differently. My methods and techniques are working, but not optimal. That's I would say. So I don't know if I would do that exact thing again. It's very useful, I think, as just a reference check along the process to just kind of have that ability. It's really convenient to just open your phone, open an app, and just put the image over top and look. And so
Yeah.
yeah, but hopefully next time, if I'm fortunate enough to get another commission of this sort, it'll be possible to do it on a one-to-one life-size scale and have a live model. That would be great too.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
That would be a beautiful thing to have, wouldn't it?
Mhm.
It'd be so nice.
Yeah.
It's funny. I had more courage as a younger person to ask people to pose for me
Mm.
than I do now. I feel bad like taking up people's time. I don't know if it's just the brashness of being young and you're just sort of you don't care as much, or I don't know what it is, but and also doing more shows, probably exposure to more people, thousands of people at a show, and just being like,
Right.
hey, will you at least stop for a picture? Whereas if you're at the
Yeah.
bookstore, you're not really gonna, or the grocery, you're not gonna like run up to someone and take their picture. But I do know sculptors
Yeah.
that do that pretty regularly, and
Mm.
I think that would be a fun muscle to flex. The courage to gain more reference photos, because it is actually pretty difficult to find great reference photos, even of famous individuals, right? And that's like really key when you're trying to grab a likeness. Is like you not only want that side view, but you want that three-quarter view, and
Yeah.
you also want that bug's eye view,
Yeah.
um, and that
Yeah.
bird's eye view. So it's like,
Yep.
where are you going to find that? Like
I know.
it's a challenge.
Big challenge. Big challenge for sure.
So yeah, if you wouldn't mind, the main reason I had you on today was to see if you might be willing to submit a front face, a three-quarter
We'll just
side profile. Yep.
take some screenshots. But here, let's do it right now.
Okay. All right.
Here. Here,
Okay.
we can do this in post too.
Got that one.
Yep.
All right. This
Mm-hmm.
is actually a free resource for anyone who's trying to carve Lucas. Can we get the other side? We got to get the other side.
Don't confuse this for my nose though. This thing right here got a
Okay. All
pretty
right.
substantial thing going on.
Yeah.
Actually, I do you remember like in one of the early I can't remember if it was on Instagram or Snapchat or something. It was a the face swap filter. It was like one of the first filters I ever played with, and it was just like you have your buddy in the screen, and it takes two faces and swaps them, and everyone's like, "Oh, that's the funniest, craziest thing I've ever seen." I had it swap with my Adam's apple once. It supplanted my face onto my Adam's apple, and my face became this giant nose blob thing. It was pretty funny. It was pretty funny. I got a kick out of it.
Yeah. That's worthwhile. That's pretty good.
Yeah.
I do remember that now. Yeah, I
Yeah.
always think back to that one that did make you look older, like added like 50 years or 40 years
Yeah.
to you, and it turned you into a girl.
Yeah.
Yeah, all that fun
Yeah.
stuff. Yep.
Interesting combining that with reference photos.
Yeah.
Using that as a reference photo, just
True.
like girl Alec.
Yeah,
That would
that's
be a fun YouTube video. Just like I turned myself into a girl and carved it.
that would probably attract a different audience, but yeah, it'd be
Yeah.
worth considering. Yeah, I'll think about that. I'll think about that.
You can have the idea for free. I won't charge you anything.
Yeah, it's a free consultation, right?
Yeah.
That's ultimately why I have this podcast is to consult with people for free. But no, I actually I learned from you in your meetings with Bruno about the attachment process of the limbs and aside from the glue up, the the limbs, are they carved separately?
Yes. I got these screws in. I had to get these screws custom fabricated.
They're
I
massive.
I was gracious enough to have the offer from Bruno because we were talking about this crucifix project that I had coming up while we were in Italy, and I just naturally just conversation, just like started asking him some questions, and he was just volunteering all this great information. And he said, please email me when you get home, and we can continue talking about it, and I can walk you through a lot of the kind of technical aspects of the process. So
Yeah.
these screws here are an essential part of fixing the arms onto the shoulder, and you can't get them in North America anywhere. You can just get them in, I think it's pronounced Ortize in northern Italy.
Okay.
Um, and so I just figured out that getting them custom fabricated was just as expensive as getting them shipped from there, but I
Right.
got them way faster. So,
Right.
yeah, the idea is you set these plates into the wood so that they are flush with the surface of the wood, one on the shoulder, one on the arm, and they've just got these little male and female ends. Not the most complicated mechanism in the world, but then, yeah, you just screw it on and then it sits flush and square, and that's it's partially providing structural support there with the screw, but also you're combining that with wood glue as well. And I was telling you over text earlier there, like since you have to do the arm long grain, and obviously the body is long grain vertically.
Right.
Um, so you'd be attaching end grain to long grain over a very small surface area. So glue alone wouldn't probably hold it very well.
Right.
So yeah,
At least it wouldn't be reliable enough to start really putting weight or banging on with a mallet, right?
that's exactly
Right.
right. Yeah,
Yeah, like it would hold up as like a coat rack, maybe for like light spring jackets, but it wouldn't hold your winter jackets and your spring jackets.
exactly. Not your your Goodwill like leather coat that's a 3XL and you're
Right.
trying to be a hipster. It's
Exactly.
collapse that thing for sure.
Your Goodwill leather coat. I think we
Yeah.
lost a certain demographic.
Maybe so.
Although,
Secondhand stores is Goodwill a Canada only thing? I don't know.
no, it isn't. No, Goodwill is actually definitely a thing in the States, and
Yeah.
it's a pretty good spot for clothes.
Oh yeah, it's great. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep. Totally. Halloween costumes,
Yeah.
whatever.
One man's favorite outfit is another man's Halloween costume, is what I always
Yeah.
say. So, actually, I remember my one of my a girl that I dated went to college, and her close friends dressed up as me for Halloween. Uh,
Come on.
yeah, a wood carver. Yeah, they had their fake chisels. Apparently, it kind of hurt my
Wow.
feelings a little bit, if I'm being honest. But
What do they have for fake chisels? How would they
I don't
what did they
actually know.
use?
I may have just made that part up. I think they had tools of some kind to imitate chisels. I don't know. I could be wrong. But
Did this person have the beard and the whole look
yeah, so
kind
the
of?
girls drew. Apparently, they drew a
Oh,
beard and mustache
nice.
faces. I'm sad that I didn't ever get a picture. It must have been so offensive that she couldn't send
What
me a picture because I
Well, it
never.
depends how you look at it. It could be a great honor as well for you.
I am
Just like
honored, but
that's
I would have liked to have seen the photo. I'm guessing a Groucho Marx, like the nose piece and glasses, was involved. That's probably why I couldn't see it. Anyway, so that's a pretty heavy piece of metal to attach that,
yeah,
and it makes sense that you need it.
yeah, yeah.
And so
Mhm.
the surfaces that meet are then you mentioned they were planed, right? If I'm that to
Yeah,
do
that's
with it.
right. Yeah, so you got to get those surfaces perfectly flat. Um, and the I think what, I don't know, maybe my biggest challenge in this whole piece will be getting the angle of the arms perfectly right. Because like on the shoulder side, it's going to be perfectly flat, but on the arm side, it's going to have to be angled. Because like, you know, on the
Right.
crucifix, the arms aren't extended
Yep.
laterally completely like
Mhm.
on a flat plane, right? They're bent backwards kind of like that. So to get that angle so that they're
Right.
sitting just right will definitely take
Yep.
some trial and error and finicking, and then that's right. So once you have the angles correct, then you make it perfectly flat with just hand planes. Yeah,
Right.
yeah,
Wow. And that's an interesting thought I didn't really consider before, that the weight of his torso is pulling him forward,
that's
and
right.
he's hanging by his wrist, and so there would be
Yeah,
this sort of
yeah,
bend forward.
yeah,
Yeah, that's
yeah.
an added level of challenge for sure.
Oh
I'm
yeah.
I'm so impressed, Lucas,
Oh,
that
thanks, man.
you've made as much progress, and I know based on that clay model that you're gonna absolutely kill this.
Thanks, man. I really appreciate that. That means a lot. Yeah,
Yeah,
I'm.
it's just so cool. You're inspiring me for sure to try a larger scale. I've definitely, even in talking to my neighbors, they were like, "Why haven't you done a size scale figure?" And so I had no answer. So it's inspirational.
Well, I mean, hey, you know, like we're like as a full time guy, like that's a massive project. So,
Right.
like if I didn't just happen to be in the right place at the right time to receive this commission, I would never have been able to justify to myself probably for the next, 5 years or 3 years, just like doing a project of that scale just because I wanted to do it. So
Right.
I think until a commission opportunity falls in your lap, that might be what it takes. And yeah,
Yep.
when you're doing this full time, that's kind of one of the realities that you got to deal with. So yeah, I am very, very lucky and very gracious in so many ways that this just happened to kind of,
I I
it happened upon me.
I was gonna say, I think it's very um, interesting. I guess this sounds like a condescending question, but let me set this up because I actually it comes from a personal issue that I have. So when hang a carving up um, in a place that I live, I cannot stand to look at it because I constantly, once it's finished, I feel like I find the things that I needed to do to it that
Oh
I
yeah.
didn't do, right, or didn't notice later in the
Yep.
process. And so, am I correct in saying that this is going in your parish where you attend?
Yes.
I wonder if
Yes.
you'll have to avert your eyes because of that one minutia, like that one knot that didn't get bleached, or like that. I don't know if you're like me in that way, but
Oh yeah. Of course. Of
yeah,
course. I am I have I think I've developed a good ability to be so unbelievably nitpicking harsh
right,
on myself and
yep,
critiquing my own work, but being very, very comfortable with that.
that,
That
yeah,
I mean it. I mean, I guess it depends on the severity of what I'm looking at, and how, like if I think it really looks horrible to the point that other people are noticing it and
right,
like that then it would be very uncomfortably bothering for me.
right,
But when it yeah, if it comes to just like, oh, like I don't know, like there's like like the ear should have been like a millimeter
yeah,
higher or
yeah,
something like that. Like I'll notice
exactly,
those things. I'll be like, yep, there's that, and I'll probably have a massive list of those kinds of things.
yep,
And I'm sure exactly right. That's such a I've thought of this too. Like I'm going to be looking at this thing for a long time,
right. But what a
and
beautiful. But then the reality is ultimately that so many people will look at that beautiful piece of art, 7 foot tall statue of Christ, and that you're literally you're literally helping people connect to their faith in a deeper way. And so it's like,
yeah,
and they're just seeing the sheer beauty of this sculpture. And if you're
yeah,
anything like me, you're gonna see that one micro size knot that you didn't see. Like that, like you
yeah.
wish you would have said. I don't
I
know.
know.
I
The
hate to
thing
impose my
I'm sure I
psychosis on
will
you.
be. I'm sure I will be having those kinds of thoughts and experiences looking at it. But at the same time, like you mentioned, this is something that is an object for worship to be a sort
Yeah,
of a conduit for the spiritual experience of
yeah,
this parish community, right? So when you think about it in that way, like, it makes it seem kind of selfish to be nitpicking about your
Yep.
own little
Yeah.
things that you think are idiosyncratic about it. So
Right.
like
True.
it's a totally different ball game. Yeah, making something like this is not like a Lucas Kost work of art to go in a
Right.
gallery or to go just be in somebody's house. It's like this is an odd this has a spiritual function for a
Yeah.
large community of people,
Right.
and yeah, yeah, that egg adds a lot of magnitude for it for me. So and it
Yeah.
makes me think about it in a very different way.
Yeah. I love that. I like that idea that it like subtracts you from the that personal element, that part that makes you say like, does this represent my skill or me, or and instead it's like, is this capturing that what I'm trying to capture
Yeah,
for this
yeah,
people? Like that's yeah, that's really cool. I hadn't thought about it.
mhm,
That's really great. So
yeah.
yeah, so in creating the piece, I was shocked to see how much progress you made on the face. And I was telling, as you were talking just a minute ago, one of these thoughts popped in my head, which is like, I know you're going to do well because this impulse to procrastinate, I feel like I'm not seeing that in your progress on that piece.
Well,
That's
I
pretty
have
significant.
other, yeah. I have that's a whole other can of worms, the impulse to procrastinate. I'm getting married in 2 weeks, and I initially was hoping to get it finished by then
Oh,
at the
there's a
parish,
good
right?
deadline.
It was a self-imposed deadline. I don't really
Yeah,
have much of a deadline. This is like they're doing a whole renovation at the church, and this will probably be the first thing that gets done
right.
uh, for that renovation. But I would have, yeah, uh-huh. I mean, gosh, back like because this thing has been in the works. Not like I haven't been working on the carving for that long, but we've been going back and forth just in the design stages and the initial discussions. They started over a year ago now. And so when I was first formulating what I thought would be the deadline for myself to finish it by, I was thinking Easter of this year. And
Yeah,
so I'm keep having these deadlines
yeah,
that I'm imposing on myself that get pushed
right.
further and further back. So we'll see.
Yeah, that's great. That makes a lot of sense. Actually, for me, marriage was such a motivating factor to just getting in the shop earlier, to engagement
Mm,
in general, literally just being in a committed relationship. But generally, the idea of someone that sleeps in the same bed as me or near me, that gets to witness my work ethic was like definitely motivating. Um,
yeah.
and
Uh,
so for sure, I think
yep.
yeah, that's helped me with
Yep.
procrastination to an extent.
Me too, man. Me too. Me too. That's a huge, huge thing. Like,
Yeah,
yeah, yeah. Danica has been so supportive for me. I don't think I would have gone to Italy. It wouldn't have connected with Bruno there if it weren't for her kind of
right.
encouragement to say, no, you should go. Like, this is the time in your life when you're going to be able to do this, and like kind of a once in a lifetime opportunity.
Yeah.
It's expensive, but like we can handle it. It'll be fine. And
Wow.
so, like, I 100% certainty would not have gone if it weren't for that. So,
Right.
shout out to the fiance.
For real. That's a huge
Yeah,
deal. And just to have
yeah.
that merit badge to say that you've even just met that guy to me is just so cool.
Me too, man. Me too. And
So cool.
he's now sending me videos to like he did the demonstration screwing on the block of wood with how to use the screws and
So
you
cool.
know yeah so
That's so
fantastic.
cool.
He's like he's talking with his wife in Italian saying, "Oh, you know, you're holding the camera wrong. Hold it." Kind of almost bickering back and forth with her, and she has some snarky comment that I can't understand, obviously, but it's
Google
just it makes me
Translate.
smile from ear to ear. It's so awesome. Yeah.
I love that. That's amazing, dude. It's so
Yeah.
cool. I definitely appreciate you talking about the carving because there are some technical bits that I mean, just that plate alone, I've never seen that. I hadn't thought about that, but it makes so much more sense than other things, right? Because that's a big problem. End grain to not end grain. That's a
Yep.
good point you made earlier. And that would have been
For
really
sure.
rough to carve in end grain. Like that would
Yeah,
have posed another issue.
that's right. Yeah, to carve an arm in end grain is a long, skinny thing like that, and especially when you get to the fingers, right? If you start trying to push on a finger, like even push carving, you wouldn't really be able to do it.
It's gonna snap. Yeah.
It's gonna snap. Yeah,
Right.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Okay, so talk to me. I don't want to go. so we definitely talked about how you started, and in a previous podcast. So if folks want to listen to that, they can, on the Coffee and Carving Show on this channel, which we are back on now. This channel, but um, talk to me about what it's been like for you. You're a full time carver now, and maybe like,
I am.
I guess the turning point is interesting for me. Like, when did you decide? What were the influencers in the decision to become a full time carver? Because that's a crazy huge leap for a lot of people.
It is. It's funny. You actually just summed it up a couple minutes ago pretty darn well for me. I'd say the number one primary influence was just starting a family, meeting my fiance, getting into, having a serious relationship, and she, I was kind of gearing up for medical school at the time. I'd been studying for the MCAT, written it, sent in an application, didn't get it in my first year. I was like, whatever, that's kind of somewhat normal. I was preparing for another application cycle, and just yeah, over the course of that year, which would have been 2019 into 2020, um, which was obviously coinciding with COVID as well, which played a role. It was like, like, do I really want to be um, sacrificing this much of my time and energy in the here and now in my 20s and 30s to
Right.
be doing everything that I have to do to get into med school, and then all like being in residency where you're not paid great, especially not when you consider you're working 80 hours plus a week, like
Right.
every week for a number of years depending on your specialty. And so just
Right.
thinking about all of that. People who go into that field are so committed and so smart, and so like I have so much respect having gone through all of what it takes to all of the sacrifice that it takes to be in that field.
Hmm.
Really, really incredible. Um,
Hmm.
and the other factor is like I never honestly would have imagined that wood carving would have been something that I never saw it as an option that was on the table for me.
Right.
So, um, yeah, and as I was starting to say earlier, which was the point that you had mentioned there, that starts the idea of starting a family here and now, like let's get things moving, let's get engaged, let's get married, let's buy a house, let's do all these things as soon as we can. So, and that's kind of an excitement and an energy that Danica had, that she kind of brought to our relationship, that I kind of hopped on and am still riding the wave of. So yeah,
Yeah.
now that it just kind of changed the time horizons for me. And then, yeah, throughout COVID, I started selling my carvings, and it was just kind of snowballing organically. I've had like a lot of a lot of good luck, a lot of positive feedback from people, and things have gone as well as I could have probably hoped at the outset. So,
Wow.
yeah, it's just kind of organically has happened in that way for the last couple of years. So, yeah,
Yeah. So for me, I'll just say, I started out in carving as a hobby, as a kid, right? But
yeah,
soon I started to realize, as I was selling things, that this could be a career. Like very soon, within like a year of carving. And so
mm,
I think
cool,
ultimately I knew from that young age that this was something that I was going to try and make happen as a career.
yeah.
But what was interesting about that was, I didn't. There were seasons of commitment and, really, believing that, like actually
Mm,
internally accepting that that could happen. I
yeah.
fell in and out of that. Like, this doesn't seem like a great idea. An adult would come and be like, "This is not a great idea." I'd be a teenager, and it's like, well, they
Of
know.
course, of
So
course.
And so for
Yeah.
me, I guess I'm curious, like, what it was for you. That was it a continuous process of, okay, now I'm selling, so potentially this could become a career, or was it, okay, day one, I'm going to become a professional wood carver, and then from that point forward, you're working on carving. Like, what was that transition like for you?
The transition for me was, I would say it was very experimental. And I think that's kind of my uh, uh, just my personality, I think. Like I didn't really feel the need to make a firm decision one way or the other at the outset. I was like, and the other point of this that part of this I didn't mention is that like I, would be working, doing like bartending or serving or something like that. But then COVID stripped all of those opportunities away. So
Mhm.
I was also forced to try as like,
Wow.
so that was actually, yeah, I left that part out. That was kind of an essential part of it too.
Right.
Where I was like, well, I've been doing, like you, I've been doing wood carving as a hobby since I was like, 10-ish years old, I would say. And so I was like, let's revive that hobby that I'd had. I hadn't really done much of it in the years leading up. Like I wonder if like if I started making carvings, started to try to get as good as I possibly could get at it, and started selling them, like what would happen? Let's just see, kind of thing. So it
Right.
was very much an experimental thing, and as I continued to get positive feedback with it, I just kind of kept riding with it. And
Right.
so it was definitely a gradual kind of thing, and not a sort of decision that I made and then had to really convince all the people in my life that this is going to work. There was definitely a lot of that on the way,
Right.
and yeah, that's a tough sell for the parents to say like,
Yes.
you know what, I'm not going to medical school. I'm going to be a wood carver. I'm going to be an artist. But they're like my parents wouldn't they weren't necessarily the most difficult people to convince of that. They've always like my mom's a singer and a songwriter, not professionally, but and my dad, is an incredible five-string banjo player, bluegrass style, and so like they're very very artistic, creative
Right.
personalities as well. So and
That's huge.
very very they're very kind of well, I mean, but they're very reasonable too, and it is reasonable to be to question somebody, right? If
Sure.
you have if
Right.
my son comes up to me and says wants to turn some kind of hobby that he has, or daughter or whatever, and I'm like, I'll definitely be wanting to press them on it to make sure that
Right.
they actually have somewhat of a plan and are thinking through things and not just going wherever the breeze blows them, kind of thing. So
Right.
yeah, yeah, there were a lot of kind of conversations where I was tested in that way,
Right.
but yeah, it's just
So,
responsible parenting, I think.
right.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's funny too because I think my parents, in the same way that I came in and out of commitment to carving, they also did with me and my, it's almost like they empathized with my questioning of it when I did, and then
Yeah.
empathized with my commitment when I had it. And
Yeah.
ultimately, what more could you expect of your parents, right? Like
Totally.
when I was in college and pursuing business or whatever it was, at one time I was studying sciences, undergraduate, I was moving toward a bachelor's in science to potentially go into therapy or
Yeah.
some part of medicine. Who knows? I didn't really know. But the funny
Yeah.
thing was they were equally as supportive of me doing that as they
Hmm.
were of me carving when I was fully committed to it. Like actually proving that I was committed to the idea of doing carving as a
Right.
career.
Right.
So
Yeah. Interesting.
yeah,
And I would imagine that would be very different from your perspective and how those types of interactions would feel as if you're young, if you're like significantly younger, like even 18, 19 years
yep,
old kind of thing.
yep,
That would be very very different. It's very different than a conversation than like a 25-year-old
yeah,
with their parents. Is just kind of more of a
right,
discussion, and yeah, yeah,
right. Yeah, they have a little bit less say in your life when you're not living with them too. That helps. But
that's right,
yeah,
that's right.
which is why it's fascinating to me and I think really neat and ultimately inspiring to for folks because I feel like there are a lot of folks who um, probably write off the idea of transitioning careers or leaving school or really doing something creative outside of their current life path because they feel like maybe it's too late in that transition period. And I
Yeah,
remember, seeing you in a like a live stream class that I taught like during COVID and
yeah,
thinking, you are by far the youngest person I've had in a live stream. And at the
mm,
same time, when we talked, realizing that you were my age and that you were starting out, there was this
yeah.
thought of, wow, this guy is really doing it. Like he's
Ah,
committing to it.
cool.
And then as I saw you progress in your even in just your ability to, of course, your ability to carve, but your ability to uh, be consistent with posting, and you've just really grown this massive following on social media and
Yeah,
consistency. I think it speaks to you to the more to the fact that what you do with your time is a lot more important than anything else. Like,
yeah. Oh man. Yeah, well, thank you for saying all that,
yeah,
first of all. And that class of teaching the female face that I took was so influential. And while we're somewhat on this topic, I would just want to say that like watching your videos, all the free content that you did a live demonstration with the International Association of Woodcarvers on carving. You just we're taking requests from the group there, and somebody said carve a Native American indigenous type
oh
face,
really?
and I watched that during COVID when I was like, okay, I got to get good at this. I'm gonna go online. I'm gonna see what I can find on carving realistic faces, and then that video came up. I was like, whoa, this dude's carving in cottonwood bark. I'm carving cottonwood bark,
How
and
crazy.
look at what he's doing. Is like this is possible. So that was
Huh.
absolutely like while we're talking about my career trajectory, finding that video was like that was huge too. So
That's
I don't know
cool,
if I don't
man.
think I've ever told you that. So, but that's
No,
totally
that's awesome. That's
yeah,
really cool.
yeah, yeah,
And when we met, I think you stayed on the live stream, or maybe it was another. I don't know how we ended up talking on the phone, or maybe through text, but finding out that you were no, actually, it was just through following each other. I think on Instagram, and seeing that we had shared like so many common hobbies, like hockey, guitar.
yeah,
You're literally in a band. You play guitar.
yeah,
Um,
yeah. Your dad's is your dad a luthier?
right.
And my dad is not quite a luthier, I don't think, but he is darn near a luthier. He knows a lot about fixing acoustic guitars and stuff.
How
So
cool.
yeah, it's just all kinds of hilarious similarities.
That's
Yeah,
amazing. It's
yeah, it
almost like
is.
living in parallel universes, you know.
Yeah, yeah. I'm Alec Canada over here. That's what it is.
And I'm
Yeah,
Lucas America.
yeah,
Wait, America? Did I just? Which is
yeah.
actually a very classic American slip up. So, uh, that
Oh, referring to the United States as
right,
America. Yeah,
America.
yeah, America. Yeah, but that's how people like you know the students that were in Italy. There was someone from Netherlands, someone from Austria, from France, and they're all referring to you know because there is Brian from
Yep.
Tennessee and another Lynn from LA,
Oh,
and
okay.
they're you know that's America to them as well. So it's not only an American thing.
Right.
All
Okay.
right,
Okay.
there we go.
There you go.
Yeah, United
Really, you
States
really
again.
saved me. Thank you.
Yeah,
But
yeah,
yeah, dude, that was just seeing the photos from that experience. Just to hop back on that for a second, my
for
ADHD
sure.
brain, that Bruno
I know.
experience.
I feel like I can't even remember. You're starting to ask me a question, and then
Oh,
I can't remember.
oh, was I?
But let's see.
Oh, well, what I
It
guess
was
what I was pointing to earlier was just that you know, you really committed to this. And I think you kind of talked about me there for a second, but I was
yeah. I
ultimately
know.
trying to,
Oh, right. It
yeah,
was like coming into it kind of later in life and the time commitment and yeah. That's another thing I'll say about that is just a factor of luck, which was you know it coincided with the pandemic, and I had a lot of time to be able to
right,
invest into building a social media account and getting as good as I could possibly get at it. So
yeah,
and I was studying to get into medical school, which is kind of a full time undertaking too. So
right,
it wasn't the easiest thing, but at the same time, I didn't have a job that was sucking 9 to 5 hours out of my schedule. So that helped for sure.
right,
But to your point earlier, I think a lot of people do write it off too early as a potential if they have a hobby or if they
right,
have some kind of a artistic thing that they do that energizes them. You know, I would encourage them from my experience. What I could share is that being experimental in small increments
mm,
without, you don't feel the pressure to make this big decision where it's like, I'm just going to walk in and hand in my resignation
right,
and I'm going to fully commit to this. It's like, just if you have the ability to just like do these little tiny rollouts of what you want to try to put out there into the world and just experiment and see, right?
yeah,
Because it might work, it might not work. You might have to make adjustments and that's how you learn and you make those adjustments is by just experimenting, really.
right.
Yeah.
It's so funny because I think that's such a healthier mindset than when I started out. I think there was like a feeling of I'm either doing this or I'm not. I don't know that
Yeah,
there was an experimental sense. It was either I'm going to not go to school uh, and do this, or I'm going to go to school. And there were times where I did both, and that was challenging for sure.
yeah,
Like whatever, 17 credit hours and trying to carve, 7 carvings a week, and just like that was horrible.
yeah.
Um, but I think that just that moderate
Crazy.
moderate attitude of being, like uh, just like using it as like a trial period of a test is so smart. Like give yourself a few months, see how it goes.
Yeah, I'm happy that I was able to have that mindset, and that having that mindset would be more difficult for different types of people. Like I'm a personality who's comfortable with uncertainty and
Right.
just figuring things out. I know some people aren't necessarily wired like that. It would be something they would have to work at a little bit more to adjust that kind of perspective and
Yeah.
stuff. But that was a natural kind of a thing for me, I think.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I laugh at when you said like coming into it later. I just think it's kind of funny because by like the average age of a carver, by that
Right.
standard, you
Right.
are you're a spring
I'm in the
chicken.
cradle.
Yeah, you're still in the
I'm
cradle.
in the cradle.
Right. But
I'm playing with the little spinning toys in the sky. I'm just a little baby. Yeah.
right. You're 28, you
Yeah.
said?
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm 27. I'm
27.
turning 28 this year.
Oh, so
Yeah.
you're younger than I. I'm 28.
You're 94?
Yes.
Okay, I'm a 95.
Right. So
Yeah.
so you are in fact an actual baby by the I think the average listener to this podcast I think is 50 to 60, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Um
Yeah. Hey.
but to your point that I was listening to Noah. Are you familiar with Noah Khan?
No,
He's a
I'm
really
not.
great singer-songwriter who was kind of like uh, hobnobbing with big time singers and writing these really neat collaborative songs, and not really, by his admission, not really necessarily getting anywhere with it. Very talented. People knew who he was, but he decided that he would go home and from his studio sessions with these, basically, singer celebrities, and write folk songs. So
Hmm.
he'd do one a day for 2 years, and from those songs, he created this album called Stick Season, and it's by far and above his most prolific, but his most popular work, like by far his most
Right.
popular work. And
Very interesting.
he said it was because of this album that he finally kind of decided that he might have a career in music, like long term. He didn't know, and I
Right.
just think like
Right.
it speaks to your thought process, like having that sort of like thing of, well, we'll see. I'm proving it to myself. I think that's good.
Yeah. Yeah. That's how I think of it. It's like I mean, this is kind of maybe a seemingly strange, out of left field kind of analogy,
Yeah.
but it's in people who are, doing tech startups, so like in the business world, right? You hear this like I've heard this saying that's like fail early, fail often, and you just have to do tiny little iterations of your projects and hear feedback from people. Don't put too much weight
Mm,
in your mind on any decision. Just kind of experiment with it and see what happens. And
yeah.
it's difficult to do when it's your career, and especially as an artist too. Like it's so much of your identity is wrapped up in your work,
Yeah.
obviously. So it's hard to have that the required sort of uh, the detachment
Yep.
to have that mentality. It's difficult to take yourself out of that, but
Right.
it's really helpful if it can be done. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. That's true. Yeah.
Yeah.
For sure. This is a whole lot harder when you take things personally, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's obviously a very human thing to do. And I certainly do it all the time.
Right.
Yeah. But try to catch myself whenever I can.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
No, it's like I think I can't remember if it's this gentleman who wrote this book, Austin Kleon. He wrote a couple of books, Keep Going and Show Your Work, which I would suggest if anyone's creative, read it. So good.
Cool.
But
Very
he
cool.
he talks about this thing of like separating your identity from your work and allowing yourself to
Yeah.
create and not feeling as though it's like the summation of what you have to offer. And if it dies,
Right.
like you're not dying with it. It's okay.
That's right.
Deep breath.
Yeah. Exactly. Exactly.
So
Exactly.
yeah, it's
Yeah.
like it's actually really helpful from a marketing standpoint too, because you start to understand like the really histrionic or like the really dramatic people in Hollywood, like Dolly Parton, who has this massive, giant bush of a head of hair, and
Yeah.
really like realizing that she's just playing the character and she enjoys the
Oh.
character
Oh
and
yeah.
she doesn't associate with the character. She's just having fun. Like there's this
Yeah.
healthy separation from it, and I
Yeah.
love that. And
That's so
I
cool.
think there's something to be learned there from her.
Cool. I can't remember if where I heard this. I have a feeling it might have even been from one of your previous episodes or something, but was it that like Dolly Parton's, she has it made in the shade as a celebrity because she doesn't really need to go into any disguise. She has no kind of undercover outfit because Dolly Parton on the stage, like she doesn't even have blonde hair in reality,
Right.
right? She just like looks like herself and she walks around
Yep.
and nobody notices her.
Yep. Yep.
So that's, yeah,
So cool.
cool.
Yeah, it's like those people that you laugh at in the end, you think maybe they're actually pretty smart because you're laughing at their act and it's attention. And that
Right. Totally. Oh, are we there? I feel like the screen on my end looks as
was that.
if it has eyelids
Yeah,
and it's
but
blinking. It just went black a couple times in a row, but we're back. So we're good.
yeah, interestingly the recording stopped and started. So I'm not sure if that means that our conversation is
Oh, interesting. Interesting.
Anyway,
Oh, well, we'll see.
we'll just button
Fix it
this
in
up and
post.
then
Yeah.
fix it in post. If it didn't record the first conversation, that'd be a bummer, but
Oh,
all because of a phone call. Anyway, so this has been really fun. I think we could
I'm
talk for
sure we
another
could.
4 hours,
And
and
let's do it. No, I'm
we
just
should
kidding.
definitely do it again. This is
I
good.
said, and let's do
What's
it.
that?
No, I'm just kidding. Yeah, yeah. No, we'll for sure do this again. If I can come back on anytime, I'd be very happy to. Yeah, as I progress with
Yeah,
this guy back here, maybe when the arms get put on, or maybe in the end stages, we can do another tour and update.
yeah.
Yeah,
I would love that.
cool. Right on,
I would
man.
love that, man. All right, take care, and thanks for grabbing your phone.
Of course, man.
Thanks
My
for
pleasure. My
driving all the way
pleasure. Big
down.
fan of the show, so I'm always happy to be participating.
Very cool. Keep it up,
Right
dude.
on. Cheers.